which is the moon. I'm your Friday hostess, Natalie, and this week's topic is, how does your region affect your craft? In other words, how does where you live geographically affect the way you practice the craft? Now, this was a topic that was recommended to me by one of our viewers, and I really thought that it was a great idea because she has a blog and was doing an interview, and this was one of the questions that came up in the interview, and I thought, man, this is fantastic. We should use this as a topic because I do believe that your geographical region plays a very big role in how you practice your craft. Now, the core beliefs of the craft, I think, tend to run the same for all of us. However, ways in which you utilize the craft, how you perform your spell work, how you devise your spell work, and what you include in your spell work, I think can vary a lot by region. I think in this day and age, where a lot of what we can get on the internet. I know a lot of the herbs that I use in my craft come from Amazon. I do a lot of ordering on Amazon for supplies and things like that. However, I also have some wonderful resources for local items because I do believe in knowing your local flora and fauna and using what's easily and readily available and pertinent to your region in terms of gaining the help of the regional spirits and deities that are in the area. So one of the ones that I have is Wild Edible Plants of Texas. This is a new one that my husband picked up for me, and it's got a lot of really interesting things. Now, some of these items I don't always use for like edible, but like nettle is very good in some of the medicines, especially for the throat, mulberry, that kind of thing. These little mesquite pods, we used to use these as musical instruments when I was a kid, and I have used them in ritual as like a rattle. So that would be one of the ways in which my area, my region affects my craft, because I don't have a ritual drum that I can use, but I can use these little mesquite pods and use them as a rattle and gain the same kind of effect out of it. And if you hear my dog barking in the background, I'm sorry, she's old and senile and barks a lot. The other one is Wildflowers of Texas. It's kind of a thick book. What I like about it, it's broken down by color and by region. It tells you exactly where in the state you can find this flower. And so I find that I use a lot of these things that are specific to my region of Texas, which, by the way, in the back of this book there is this wonderful regional map. So that will affect my craft as well, because it will affect what plants I'm using in my spellcraft and my work. Now, this one was edible and useful plants of the Southwest, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. I got this from one of the local parks that we used, and I used this one specifically for the dyes, knowing which plants to use in magical inks. And so I find that that's another way that it affects my practice, because knowing what plants are in the area allows you to know which ones are good for making magical inks of various types and magical dyes to color like bags, because I like to buy the neutral color, natural bags from like Hobby Lobby or Michael's or someplace like that, and it will allow me to color those or use them as a dye to decorate the bags, and that can affect how, obviously, like sigils and things like that, or the nature of the inks. For example, we have pokeberries around here, and I have made ink out of pokeberries to use in more baneful type workings, so like binding spells, that kind of thing. And I find that it's very useful and quite powerful. I think when you utilize items that come naturally to your region, you automatically gain kind of the import of the earth for that region, and it gives a little oomph to your spell work that you may not get if you're importing items that are not from that area. It allows you a deeper connection to the region and to the land in which you're living, which obviously is infused with your own energy, because when you're living in a certain space, your energy infuses that space. So that energy infuses in you as well. It becomes kind of a part of who you are, and you are a part of it, so to speak. So when you're utilizing things that are local to your region, it really does make your craft work more pertinent and more potent, I personally have found. Another thing about living in Texas that affects my craft, and I don't want to get into like big politics discussions, but I do think that political views, regional, events, historical things, those kinds of things go into how you practice your craft, how open you are with your craft, how you portray your craft to others, the way you describe your craft to others, and in fact the way you perceive your craft yourself, I think are all kind of impacted in some way by where you live. So that would be another way in which my region affects my craft. I live in the middle of the Bible Belt, and so your reception to being a practitioner of the craft here is somewhat mixed. Most of what I've seen thus far has been positive, but I'm not perfectly open with all of my clients as far as what my religious persuasion, so to speak, is. If people ask me, sometimes I'll vary how I answer. So some people I'll just tell them I'm a witch. Other people I'll tell them I'm pagan. And when they ask, well, what does that mean? I'll tell them, well, I believe in both a god and a goddess, and I'm a nature-based religion, da-da-da-da-da. They're far more open to that here than they are to just saying I'm a witch. So, it does impact the way in which you perceive and describe your practice, I think, personally, from my experience. Now, others may have something different. Another way in which region affects craft is the type of spell work that you tend to do. I have found, again, this is my experience, how it affects my craft. I find that a lot of the plants around here are very good for healing and for beneficial type workings, so I tend to use that more in my craft. So for example, a lot of the plants that we have around here, as you can see, are edible or medicinal. So I will make medicines. I will utilize those plants to help like make teas and things like that, and I find that that really does affect a lot of my craft. Plus, living in Texas, we have a lot of different type of chili peppers, and I find that chili peppers actually give a lot of oomph to a spell regardless of the nature of the spell work. Sorry, my phone keeps buzzing, and I'm trying to figure out who's trying to reach me because we are working today, so anywho, hubby started a new job, already hates it, so that's a lot of moaning about that. Anyway, I find that a lot of the local plants have kind of a heat to them, which is nice because that adds a lot of oomph to your craft work. You can add jalapeno peppers and chili peppers that are very regional and local that you can sometimes even find growing wild. We have wild onions around here that you can harvest, and those are real good. I use them in medicines. I use them in spell work and that kind of thing. And I'm actually trying to work on a book about local craft work. I haven't kind of come up with a title exactly yet. I sort of have something working in my head, but I am working on a book about how my region affects my craft, or basically being a Texas witch. The thing about Texas that makes it a unique kind of region is that we're one of the few states that has all of the various different types of landforms that are out there. So depending on where you live in Texas can drastically affect what's available to you and how you practice your craft as well. Because once again, we're up in the Bible Belt. When you go further south, you get more closer to the border of Mexico, and so there's a little more open to things like Santeria and that kind of thing. You do see a lot of that in in the San Antonio region. When you are closer to the coast, obviously you see more water magic and that kind of thing. I'm completely landlocked and totally not anywhere near. East Texas has the Piney Woods, and the Cato Lake region, which I've covered in videos in past, and it's absolutely stunning. There's a lot of natural beauty there, lots of cypress and mesquite trees that you can utilize. So the practice of the magic there is very different. Being on the border with Louisiana, you see a lot more of that kind of Cajun influence to the magic that you see there, the magical people that you meet there. Me, I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. I'm in the middle of so it's landlocked completely. There's no seashells, but we do have a lot of oak trees, which I've always felt very connected to oak trees. I grew up in Live Oak, Texas, so I utilize a lot of acorns, oak leaves, oak branches, crafting wands out of them. They're very good for that. It's a tree that is sacred to the Celts, so it's something that I connect to very easily, and I find that I utilize a lot of that kind of stuff. We have a lot of mesquite trees around here. We have dogwood. We have various different kinds of trees. So there are a huge, ranging ways ranging ways in which your craft can be affected by your region, because obviously if you're in the desert, you're not going to be doing a lot of water magic or sea magic, and vice versa. Texas just happens to be a very large state with very varied regions of geographical importance and characteristics. So here in Dallas-Fort Worth, we do a lot of just kind of medicinal, mundane sorts of things. So, a little rambly, I understand. I didn't write a script for this, and I really kind of had to pull my thoughts together on it as I went along, because this is a topic that really has intrigued me, that I've given a lot of thought to, that I'm still kind of puzzling over, because I hadn't thought about the fact that where you live really can affect your craft very drastically. So, anyhow, I hope that it gives you a little bit of insight to what it's like to be here in the Metroplex of Dallas-Fort Worth. I hope y'all have a wonderful new year, and blessed be.